Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with prolific and veteran LA-based freelance jazz musician Jim Self. He talked openly about his latest 2017 album, Floating in Winter. He was born in Franklin, Pennsylvania, and has since moved on to a very fruitful career playing the tuba. Since 1974, he has worked for all the major Hollywood studios, performing for over 1,500 motion pictures and hundreds of television shows and records. In fact, he was the voice of the Mothership from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Along with the recordings and performances, he is an adjunct professor of tuba and chamber music at the University of Southern California's Thornton School of Music. So please get to know Jim and dig this interview, my friends.
Again, Jim, thank you for taking some time out. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Great. Me too.
So let me go ahead and start here. I want to kind of start with what is more ever-present, kind of what pulled me into your orbit a little bit here, which is your Floating in Winter CD. Talk to me about this project a little bit.
John Chiodini, this guitar player, I've been playing with him in this little big band, David Angel's band, for some time, and we just have a good rapport personally, and we got together and played a few tunes, and it was magic, you know, just tuba and guitar. I still don't, you know, it's one of those things. You meet people in your life that just you click with musically, and he was one of them, and so we got some tunes together and pretty much improvised the whole album.
It sounds like it. It has that feeling in the entire album. Let me go back to the beginnings of your life in Franklin, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I want to know.
My hometown was Oil City. I was born in Franklin, but I grew up in Oil City, right?
In Oil City. Okay, good deal.
Oil City, just a few miles away, yeah.
So it's a small town mentality kind of thing up there?
Oh, yes, yes. Back in the days when I was young, that was still a big oil town, you know, but now it's Rust Belt, and it's very rural, and it's on the Allegheny River.
So how did you get into music? How did this life of yours happen there, where you loved jazz and you got into music so much?
Well, I'm a tuba player, you know, a professional tuba player, but I started out as a guitar player as a 9-year-old, and then in junior high they needed a tuba in the band, and I had some musical training, so I did it. And all through high school, that sort of went well, and played in the state bands and things like that. And I decided to go be a band director like my teachers, and went to Indiana University, Pennsylvania, and studied to be a band director. But, you know, it was like most kids when you're that age, you don't know what to do, so I did what I like to do the best, and I went to be a musician. So after that, though, after going to Indiana, I got out in January, 3.5 years, and there were no jobs. So I happened to go to a U.S. Army band concert in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Just on a lark, I went backstage and asked the principal tuba player if there was an opening. He said, yes, come down to Washington and audition. So I did, and I got in the Army band, which was the best break of my life, probably. It's a great band. We played at the White House and all that kind of stuff, you know.
So when you were growing up and you were kind of getting your mind wrapped around jazz, what albums, what musicians did you listen to that really got you going?
I'm trying to say how early it was. You know, I was a bass player also for many years, electric and string bass, and started that in college and then played it for many years and played gigs and dance jobs and jazz bands and stuff like that. So I was connected to jazz in that way more than as a tuba player. I could try to think who I would listen to the most in those days. Well, I loved those trio albums of Bill Evans and Oscar Peterson and people like that. I loved that stuff, and I loved the bossa nova back in the 60s when I was a young guy. So I was very much into those two kind of tunes and those harmonies and stuff. All through college, I played guitar and just like a Freddie Green kind of rhythm guitar in a college stage band, but I didn't really get serious in jazz on the tuba until I was in my 30s, And I did a whole year with John Hendricks, the great jazz singer, on a show here in Los Angeles, and I was playing bass and tuba. And I left that show saying I got to really become a good jazz player. So I devoted 25 years to it, to be honest, to become a better jazz player on the tuba. Along the way, I made several albums and learned a lot, and still learning a lot.
Well, and you're a well-educated man. You got multiple degrees. Your final one was a doctorate from the University of Southern California. What did formal education teach you about being a musician and mastering your instrument?
You know, you have to. I mean, all the critical things of reading, playing in tune, playing with good rhythm, playing with symphony orchestras and with chamber music and recitals and all kinds of stuff like that I did. And then, of course, I was a studio musician for 40 years here in Los Angeles, and you have to sight read. You have to be a really good classical player as well as be able to handle feels and Dixieland and other kinds of things that a tuba player might have to do. So, and by the way, when I was in the Army band, I did start playing Dixieland sousaphone in the clubs in Washington. I had a fake name because you couldn't be in the Union then. I wore a wig. But I played in those kind of beer hall type places. In those days were pretty popular. Sing along Dixieland kind of places, and I learned a lot of tunes then. So. But that's baseline tuba playing. It's not solo playing like I do in this. Well, actually, this new album, I'm playing both. I'm playing bass lines under the guitar, and I'm happy to get back to that in a way.
Well, you've been around for quite a while, and this is kind of a deviation from my regular questioning, but I want to kind of take a detour here and ask you, you've been around so long that you've seen so many changes happen not only in the music industry, but in jazz. What have been the main changes that you've enjoyed seeing in music over the years?
Enjoyed seeing. Sometimes I think about the things I don't enjoy because they've decimated the studio business out here, and the fact that music is being recorded they go where they can get it done cheapest and so on. But oh boy, that's a big, broad question. Well, I'm open to everything. I don't particularly care for the minimalist music like Philip Glass and people like that. But most everything, I'm definitely into, Stravinsky and all those kind of people, and modern 20th century music, and in jazz in particular. Well, I've been through this changeover from string bass to electric bass, and when it became more rock oriented in the 70s and 60s, and so. But I was one of the people who was able to make that change. A lot of string bass players never could take up the electric bass, and so I was very much into the bands of that era. I actually had a kind of a horn band, like we called like a Blood, Sweat, and Tears band. When I taught at the University of Tennessee when I was a young guy for 5 years, and I had a band in Knoxville. There was 9-piece horn band that I did all the charts for, and played bass in it, and learned a lot. I like those tunes. I like that Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I guess we called them jazz rock in that day. So I enjoyed that stuff. I put a couple of those Man Jones tunes on my new album, which sort of are from that era. I'm trying to think what else I appreciate about the music, modern, as things have come along. It's always changing, I can tell you that. And I don't like the fact that everything is so damn loud, and that's pretty much everywhere, and that really kills it for somebody like a tuba player.
Well, the one thing, I kind of want to talk about your work with the studios, and it seems like, over the years, you've probably been in so many soundtracks and on so many pieces of music that people have heard. What kind of joy does that bring you to be in that capacity, to bring that to such a large volume of people?
Well, I'm just in a movie score, I worked for John Williams for 25 years, for instance, and I did a lot of his stuff and most of the time when you play in a studio, a tuba player doesn't have too much to do. It's not that hard, but it's critical. You can't make a mistake, and it's all sight read too, by the way. So you don't know the job, you don't know the music till you get to the job, and so that's a critical thing. And that, by the way, would relate back to your question about the classical playing. To be a good studio musician, a tuba player needs to be a good classical player, as well as hopefully have some jazz chops or some other commercial strengths rhythmically. To your question about, I don't think of myself as being that important a player in the movies. Rather, I'm just one of 100 people maybe in a big movie. But if I have a solo, that's a big deal. Not only is it challenging, but it means something in the movie.
Yeah.
And usually when they use tuba solos, certain guys like John Debney, James Newton Howard, and James Horner, people I was principal tuba for, and John Williams, they love the tuba. And they wrote a lot of tuba solos for me in those movies, and often scary. I mean, scary little challenging things to sight read and stay calm and pull them off. Now, when I hear them in the movies, I'm happy about it. I'm happy if it turns people on. My part is rather small in it, though.
Your first album that came out, that is self-produced, was Children at Play in '83, correct?
That's correct.
How do you feel about your work aside from the studio as an individual or even collaborating with folks? Do you feel good about your career as far as that's concerned?
I've had a wonderful career. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I really am. And the studio part of it is kind of wound down now. Younger guys, often my own students, are getting the gigs. But I'm still very busy playing symphony jobs and opera and stuff like that, teaching and composing a lot. And anyway, well, like I said, I play in these orchestras, and I have for pretty much my whole career here in L.A., and they're excellent. Pacific Symphony and the L.A. Opera are world-class orchestras. And so I play in those, and I play at a very high level with great singers and great conductors and great concert halls. And that's almost every week I have a symphony or an opera gig. So that's more my active playing these days than anything. And although I would still have to say my love is playing jazz and improvising, being, expressing myself melodically, which most tuba players don't get to do very often.
That's my next question for you. What is it about jazz, since you've been kind of in the spectrum of possibilities with sound, producing it? Why is it that why do you like jazz? Why do you love jazz, I should say?
Wow. That's another question. It's almost too subjective. It's just a feeling. I mean, like I said, I have been listening to jazz since I was a teenager, and always liked it, but I never felt that I was able to do it because of the instrument I played and so on. But I've been around it all the time, and I like the rhythms. I think there are two things in music. I discovered this one in my 20s. The only real artists in music are the composers and the improvisers. Everybody else is a recreative artist. Like an opera singer is not the artist. He's an artist. He's artistic, but he's not the one that wrote the music. And it's the composers and the improvisers. So I've sort of said to myself, somehow I want to make my life better in those areas and try to get pretty good at composing and improvising. And I started working on it since I was a young guy. And jazz, I just have it in my bones, I think. I'm not nearly as good as I'd like to be, but I got the rest of my life to work on it.
Right on.
And as you know, Jack Sheldon, the great trumpet player, I love what he said. At 85 years old, Jack said, "I'm just trying to get good."
I like that. So let me ask you this about you've been around great teachers, and now you're a teacher, and you've been a teacher. What is your philosophy with the kids? What do you want to give the kids as an educator?
Like you say, I've been teaching college for almost 50 years in one way or another, college tuba majors. And I've dealt with all the stuff they do, recitals and playing the sonatas and the concerti and all the way through the doctor's degrees with kids. And so I've dealt with all of that. What I focus a little bit more on now with my teaching is the creative side. Because that's something, what I tend to teach or emphasize are things that I wish I'd done better when I was young. I try to get them composing. I try to get them playing by ear. Most tuba players can't even play the national anthem without making a mistake because they're not used to playing melodies. But they can all sing it without making a mistake. So I try to train them to be better with their ears, and they get the more classical training and from the other teachers they're with. That's my focus, anyway.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. In your life, you've gotten awards, you've gotten accolades. I don't want to know the one that was a favorite one, but I want to know what award did you receive in your career that surprised you the most, just kind of threw you for a tailspin. You didn't expect it.
It's hard to say. I mean, I kind of expected some of them. I was told ahead of time they were coming. But like I got a Lifetime Achievement Award at my university in Pennsylvania, and the International Tuba Euphonium Association gave me the same kind of thing, Lifetime Achievement thing. And I've had those things were certainly impressive to me, and because of it, I've become much more involved with those institutions in some philanthropy and some giving back a little bit. They treated me like I was important. Everybody wants that in their life. I don't know there's any surprises there. I was the NARAS, the Grammys people. Is that what it is? Anyway, the Grammys people. They used to have a Most Valuable Player award here in Los Angeles for studio musicians, and I won that 3 times, and then that was pretty cool. So they don't give that award anymore.
Yeah. What is one of the nicest things, or what's a good story from a fan that really was moved by your work that you've received over the years that you remember?
One of the signature things in my career was I got to play the voice of the Mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is that 5-note bum, 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 bum. And that was just a lark. I mean, my teacher, Tommy Johnson, was his John Williams tuba player at the time, and he was on a vacation. And I get this call to do this job. It ends up in the movie. It's just sort of been a signature part of my whole career. Everybody knows about it, and it's definitely the biggest tuba thing in any movie ever. So that is definitely somewhat of a trademark, although I think I've done more challenging things and more interesting things in other ways, but they don't get the press that a big movie like that gets.
So you had mentioned, you've said it several times that you're still working on your craft, but I want to ask you this: what plans do you have for the future? What do you kind of want to accomplish? Do you have anything on your radar, short or long term, that's really a big part of your music career and existence?
Oh yeah, I have a bucket list for sure, absolutely, and I'm at an age now where I better do it now or it ain't going to happen. Yeah. And I'm trying to stay in good physical shape so I can play well and keep my orchestras going. And I love playing jazz. I'm trying to play more with John Giudini and the other groups I play with, and I like to sell more records. I like to play some concerts with it's kind of a hard thing to book, but that's on. Plus, I have some other recording plans. I'm a composer. I didn't start till I was almost 50 years old, but I've got about 60 or more pieces of music, all the way from symphony to band and chamber music and solo pieces and jazz. And I love doing that. And so I'm going to write more. Hopefully I'll have opportunities and reasons to write, concerts or commissions or something. And I'm as busy as I want to be, believe me. And it's all music related. I call myself a musicaholic.
It's a good thing to be.
And it is. It keeps me sane and keeps me from doing bad things in my life, with food or drugs or anything else,
Absolutely. It's a safe addiction. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, and your fans. But when you wake up and you face the world, who do you think you are?
Well, that's a tough question. I am generally an upbeat and happy person. And the only times I ever get down is when maybe I have had a night of drinking or something like that, and I know that's self-imposed, so I try to avoid that as much as possible, especially as I get older. I don't think of myself as, hopefully I've added something to this world, musically, in the tuba world particularly, and I've moved the ball forward a little bit. You asked me earlier about why did I want to play jazz. Well, my two most important teachers were Harvey Phillips, who was in New York City when I was young, and then Tommy Johnson, who was here as a studio musician. They were both great players, and they were important people of their time. They're both passed now, but both of them played at jazz. I don't know how else to put it. They were great players in many ways, classical type players, but they also played at jazz, and they played with groups in the studios and in concerts and stuff that were jazz bands. But they didn't really improvise. But they both of them wished that they could, but they just didn't get to it. And I saw this young. I knew I wasn't going to be able to outplay them technically or any other way, except maybe I could get a little attention because I played jazz, which is not common among classical tuba players. So that was one of the driving forces, was to take their dream a little further than they were able to.
So I guess my final question is this. You have left quite an imprint on the world of jazz and recorded music. When people flip back the proverbial page of jazz and music and come across your name, how would you want to be remembered? How would you like your contribution to music be seen by the world in generations that come?
Well, you ask tough questions, man. Without being too arrogant, I really want I want people to recognize my contributions to it, that I moved the ball forward, like I said, that the tuba is in my hands has grown and technically and musically, and that maybe I'm turning some people on with my recorded music and my compositions. Those things would make me happy. I think that kind of and I am also very involved in giving scholarships and stuff to tuba players and brass groups at different colleges. So that's part of my legacy too.
Wonderful, and I think that's happening. Jim, thank you for being so gracious with difficult questions and opening up your world to talking about the new album. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jim for his cool, his history, and his time. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.